My name is Candace Hicks, and today you will be watching a video from an Education 587 class with Dr. Crystal Brody. The purpose of this video is to have viewers understand a little bit about Puerto Rico, listen to the interview that was conducted with a recently immigrated family from Puerto Rico, and finally, for some teachers to get some recommendations and tips on how to best meet the needs of immigrants from different cultures. Puerto Rico is located in the Caribbean. It is a territory of the United States. It has become a territory of the United States since the Spanish-American War, which was a war fought between Spain and America in the early 1900s. Spain, of course, had to give up their control of Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Guam. Since then, Puerto Rico is the only remaining territory of the United States. The video that's attached, I would like for you to click on in order to see the vast landscape that makes up the island of Puerto Rico. In the video, you will see the different beaches, cave systems that are located in Puerto Rico, as well as the capital of San Juan, which is a major tourist attraction. Even though Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, it does recognize some national symbols, including many of the ones pictured here. The video is the national hymn, which is said to very well describe Puerto Ricans from the beginning of the history of Puerto Rico to now. The also seen on this slide, you can see the bird, the flower, the national tree, and the most important symbol is this, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right, coqui frog. The coqui frog is their unofficial national symbol that represents Puerto Rico. They actually even have a saying, I'm as Puerto Rican as a coqui, which is basically saying that you are not a true Puerto Rican unless you are like this frog, which is seen everywhere on the island. The languages that are spoken in Puerto Rico are Spanish and English. Spanish is the more dominant language spoken in most social events, most businesses, and taught in schools, while English is taught in the young grades and is only really spoken for tourists. English is often forgotten as they are getting older just because it is not socially used as often in the island as Spanish. But if you are big in the tourist industry and own businesses where many tourists come, English is also known to be a predominant language in that area. The people of Puerto Rico are known to be very warm and welcoming. They often have close proximity with each other and interrupt each other when talking to one another. This actually is not seen as being rude, and quite the opposite happens if you do not interject with one another. It is actually known to be more rude or show that you are uninterested in a conversation if you do not interrupt during a conversation that you might be having with any Puerto Ricans. It is also very important in Puerto Rico that you dress for the occasion whenever going out, especially when going out to nightclubs or dance clubs. There's very many dress codes on the island, and if you are not dressed up for the occasion, you might not be let in. Now, Puerto Ricans are used to tourists, so they are used to the variety in dress that they may see, but overall, Puerto Ricans like to dress well, and you are frowned upon if you are not dressed for an occasion. On the slide provided, I have a picture of Jennifer Lopez. She is a famous Puerto Rican that is famous in the United States. But I also have two very important pieces of Puerto Rican culture through the Miss Universe pageant and the Olympics that you can see on the slide. This was put into this slide because it's very interesting that Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, but they are able to participate in the Miss Universe pageant and the Olympics as their own country, even though they are not. The next few slides are going to talk about the similarities and differences between the United States and Puerto Rico and the relationship the culture plays with one another. We're going to first talk about travel. Because Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, traveling to and from Puerto Rico is fairly simple. You do not need a passport if you want to travel to Puerto Rico or if Puerto Ricans want to travel to the United States, which makes traveling very easy to do. Holidays and traditions are also very similar when it comes to the United States and Puerto Rico. For instance, one major holiday that even during the interview was discussed was Christmas. Puerto Ricans celebrate Christmas just like the Americans do. Therefore, it is one of the most important holidays for Puerto Ricans. One major tradition that was found and discussed was the wedding traditions. During the research, the traditions seemed to be pretty different, but during the interview, when discussing with the mothers a typical wedding, she explained that the father gives away the bride, similar to many American weddings, as well as there is a big celebratory party that happens afterwards with drinking and dancing and just big community with the family and friends. It's presumed that this is because Catholic is the dominant and majority religion in Puerto Rico, and it's a very dominant religion in the United States. So it is believed that this is coming from both of those main traditions in Catholicism. There are many fast food restaurants that are in Puerto Rico, so Puerto Ricans are aware of many fast food joints that the American culture has. And another major similarity that needs to be discussed is the government and how it is set up. It is a democracy that is in Puerto Rico with 3 levels and 3 branches of government, which is exactly like the United States government. The commander in chief of Puerto Rico is just like the commander in chief in the United States. Now that we have looked at the many similarities between Puerto Rico and the United States, we're going to start reviewing some differences. One of the major traditions that is different between Puerto Rican culture and the United States culture is the baby bracelet that is pictured on the slide. The baby bracelet is given to infant children to protect them from the evil eye. The evil eye is pictured here with a blue artwork that you can see. The Traditionally, the evil eye is known as an envious look that is typically given to children, and if infants wear this bracelet, they will be protected from this evil eye, and it will not come and into their future as they grow into adulthood. A holiday that is different between Puerto Rico and the United States is the Three Kings Day. Even though we know the 3 wise men in the Bible as bringing Jesus his gifts when he was born, it is celebrated in many Latin American cultures and even in German culture. There are parades to celebrate the 3 wise men, and even children on January the 5th will leave out grass and water for the 3 wise men to drink and the camels to eat the grass. And the next day on January 6th, they will have seen that the grass has been eaten and the water has been drank by the 3 wise men. Even though Puerto Ricans are aware of and tolerate fast food, typically they like the fresh food that is found on the island, and they typically will dine with this fresh food that they have found. Drinking is very typical throughout the island, and it is a way that they celebrate among friends. Even though education is mandatory from the age of 5 to 17, very similar to American education, Puerto Ricans do not have the luxury of transferring their credits from their higher education degrees to the many different American areas that Puerto Ricans can travel to over into the United States. They, unfortunately, throughout the interview, I found that even though the mother was a nurse in Puerto Rico, her credits and degree did not transfer over, and she is currently working in a factory, which proves that Puerto Ricans might not enjoy all the same rights and equality that Americans living in the United States enjoy. This has to do also with the government. Even though the government is set up similar, the Puerto Ricans are not allowed to vote in presidential elections, and they do not have a say in Congress making laws and decisions for them. They also do not have any rights to military decisions and trade decisions that involve the economy. This has led to a much violence on government buildings in Puerto Rico and a crisis in their economy. Puerto Rico now has filed for bankruptcy due to an economic collapse on the island. This is very different from the United States, since the United States is one of the leading countries in wealth. So it's interesting to know that Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, but the citizens of Puerto Rico do not share the same and equal rights and luxuries that American citizens do um, earn and receive daily, and they are also struggling in their economy, even though they are considered American citizens. This leads to the interview section of the video. The interview was conducted between a Puerto Rican family who recently immigrated from Puerto Rico to the United States and myself. It was conducted at the family's home. I asked the interpreter from my current elementary school to come with me to help minimize complications in communication. The family was found through my school, so I had no prior experience with this family. Therefore, it was a very nerve-wracking experience first meeting them. When I did go to meet them on the interview day, I was welcomed very um, immediately into the home and asked to make myself comfortable, sat down on the couch, and mother was very welcoming to this. Immediately, I noticed the proximity not being a huge problem, and and being aligned with the research that I did find. The children were very close, trying to almost sit on my lap, climbing all over their mother, and this did not seem to um, phase anybody within the room. Mother did keep apologizing about it, but I have a toddler at home, so it didn't really mean many aspects to me or change in the opinions that I felt towards her. There are some questions and answers that need to be discussed in the interview. First off, when asked about some greetings and customs, found out that a major greeting when you are approaching a Puerto Rican is to kiss one another on the cheek. This shows that you are friendly and welcoming to that other person. Custom, which I've already kind of discussed in previous slides, is that Puerto Ricans are not happy and not loving microwavable food. When conducting the interview, I asked the mother if she would rather have Puerto Rican food or American food, and she was quick to respond with Puerto Rican because she thinks it's gross that Americans microwave everything. I also found it interesting that the education and the college does not transfer over, which I've already discussed in previous slides. But mom was a nurse in Puerto Rico, and she had to change into a factory job when she moved to America because nothing transferred over. Even though this seems like a major problem and struck me during the interview, when I asked mom about how she felt about it, she said she liked the job. So It didn't seem to faze her much. Another aspect that was discussed during the interview was politics. I asked about how she felt or others felt about the fact that they do not really have a say in it when it comes to the political aspects of the president and congressional decisions that are made for Puerto Rico. She said that many young people do have violent attacks towards many of the political buildings and government buildings that are in Puerto Rico because they feel that there needs to be change happening. This also is happening due to the economy. Mom even explained that a lot of the reason that she left Puerto Rico is due to the fact that there's no money. And many Puerto Ricans know that America is the rich area, while Puerto Rico is the um, where none of the money is, and they actually are having some negative effects on their education system because many people feel that they do not need to study a lot anymore because they know they will not get a job in the future. So it's leading to a decrease in their education also. One of the most important findings, though, that during the interview that really struck a nerve with myself was the racism that Mother has experienced since she has come to the United States. Prior to this interview, 2 months to be exact before the interview, Mom and her friends went out to a local bar in the area and they refused to serve her. I asked if it was due to a language barrier, and she said they asked in English to be served, and the owner just did not want to due to the cultural differences that he saw. From the interview, we're going to move into some recommendations that teachers can have in their classroom that will help them have emergent bilinguals that are successful within their classroom. One of the first and most important things is that teachers need to get to know their kids. Now, that does not just mean get to know their favorite color, that means get to know their culture, research their culture, do a home visit to understand their culture, talk with their family, open up a line of communication between the family. If they do not speak the language, get an interpreter. Do what you can to truly understand this child. The number one way I recommend is doing a home visit. When I conducted the home visit for this particular interview, my whole outlook on what it was like to be immersed into a culture and language that I was not familiar with completely changed. I was the only person at the interview who couldn't speak any Spanish, and because of that, there were many times I felt uncomfortable because I was not able to figure out how to ask for my basic needs, like just understanding and clarifying questions that I might not have known exactly the answer to. This completely helped my outlook on understanding what it's like to be an emergent bilingual, and I was only there for an hour. So, let alone understanding what life's like day in and day out for emergent bilinguals. When you conduct that home visit and you get to know your child's culture and their academic proficiency and their language proficiency, this will help the students to embrace their own culture. Having a diverse background is wonderful, and children need to be proud of their culture. They can learn about the American and culture in the United States, but it's important that they are proud and embrace their own culture. And by you as a teacher showing interest in this, this will help those students feel more successful academically. Also, it's important that you make your classroom culturally responsive. That means really digging in to different cultures, not just celebrating Cinco de Mayo or whatever different holidays that America has now embraced, but really understanding why do we celebrate Cinco de Mayo? Why do students from Puerto Rico celebrate the Three Kings Day? And when they do on January 6th, why not discuss that with them or incorporate that into your classroom? It's important that teachers do this. To close on the final thoughts, it is very important that teachers really understand the difficulties that emergent bilinguals face every single day. I was at the interview for 1 hour and struggled for understanding basic needs of just clarifying questions. I also felt a very emotional impact on the fact that there were some points when everybody was talking and I couldn't understand, and I felt very lonely, and I wanted to leave because I felt that there were parts of the discussion that involved me, when in fact it most likely was not. But once you understand culturally what these emergent bilinguals are going with socially, it totally changes your aspect on what they face day to day. This has not even begun to discuss their academic needs, because academic language is completely different than social language and the challenges faced as coming into a new culture. The many aspects of academic language is important for teachers to get to know their content, language, how the language of science, the language of social studies varies depending on the mode of language that the child is trying to achieve. It's also important that teachers attend professional development when it's available. There is a lack of professional development that is available for um, emergent bilinguals, but if it is available, it is important that district schools and teachers take initiative to go attend. And the final thought is that we need to continue to fight prejudice and racism and embrace different cultures. When conducting the interview, I was blown away by the fact that the racism was still happening within my community, within 5 minutes of my home, that this family was not being served at a restaurant just because they have a different background than the people who own the bar. It's important that as teachers, we continue to fight this prejudice, this racism, and just continue to have children embrace cultures that are diverse, and our coworkers and the education field embrace everybody that comes from a different background, because together, when we have all these diverse backgrounds, we can grow as a nation and become a better United States. The final two slides are the references for the presentation. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for your time.